Are you drowning in tasks and losing focus on what really matters in your business? Did you know that every hour spent on invoicing, emails, data entry, or calendar chaos is an hour not spent growing your business? That's where Oak City Admins comes in. We handle the busy work so you can lead, scale, and breathe easier. For less than the cost of a full time hire, you get a dedicated expert who pays for themselves in productivity. If the biggest obstacle in running your small business is delegating to elevating, let Oak City Admins help you grow. Smart support, serious results. Hi, y'all, and welcome to another exciting episode of Down Home Dirt, the show where we dive deep into the journey of entrepreneurship with those who took the plunge and all the ups and downs that come with it. I'm your host, Dusta, and today we are joined with Jessica Moyer. She is an author, speaker, coach, and on Real Health, and director of Alloy Personal Training in Cary. Welcome and thank you.
Thanks so much for having me, Dusta.
I'm so excited to get to know you. I met you on Facebook, I believe it was, which is like my number one place for connecting. I love connecting with people. So if you guys see me on Facebook, say hello. So tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you end up in the Triangle and where are you from?
I recently moved here, I guess it's been about 4 to 5 months ago, back in August. And our youngest just started NC State, and we were just looking for a change in life. Over COVID, we were doing some road trips, trying to figure out where the next stop would be. We've been in Delaware for 20 years, and we just were ready to explore and see some new things, and really just kind of took the plunge and decided we were going to wind up in Raleigh because our youngest started school here and it just made sense for us. So this is where we chose. We love it. We love the area, love exploring. And, it's a big adjustment when you move after 20 years, kind of finding my way slowly but surely. And yeah, here we are.
It's a great adventure. I feel like after 20 years, definitely need some change. I'm from Florida, so I don't know if I could have handled the snow like you did. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, I think they got about 8 inches. When we got the snowstorm here of an inch, I think they had about 8 to 9. So it's about 10 degrees colder in Delaware. It is warmer. That was another reason we were like south. We wanted to go south because we did want warmer weather.
And it is great here. So you said you just got here right at the end of summer, so you haven't experienced a very hot July yet. So welcome.
I don't think it's that different though than Delaware summers. I mean, we'll get up to 90, 95. It can get humid, but I love the heat. So you're not going to find me complaining about the heat.
I'm with you. I was like so mad when it snowed for the week because I was like, I want the heat. I'm so tired of this. Never realized I missed it that much until the snow came in, and I was like, 17? No. Mm-mm.
Yeah. Be careful what we wish for, right?
100%. So looking for that nice warm summer. Where are you? All right. So my first question is, what led you to become a author and speaker and coach on Real Health, and what was the turning point in your life for you that made you want to do this?
I mean, I'm very passionate about health and wellness to begin with. I was a gymnast for many years, and then I transitioned into running, a cross country and track runner in high school and college, and was just always passionate about movement and health. And the older I've gotten, I am 50 now, I've realized the importance of doing all this stuff, especially as we age, but also starting young and setting that foundation. Because my story comes from my dad, who was a doctor. I grew up in New Jersey. He was like a small town community doctor, took care of everyone else but himself. And he passed away very young at the age of 61 from pulmonary fibrosis and lung
No.
cancer. And I watched him take care of everyone else but themselves. And I think so many of us can relate to doing that, right? We have very little left over for ourselves at the end of the day because we are caring for everyone else and doing all the things and not setting boundaries. And then my second child, Stephen, was diagnosed at the age of 4 months with a genetic disease called spinal muscular atrophy. And it was terminal. We were told at the age of 4 months when he was diagnosed to take him home and love him, that he wouldn't live to celebrate his first birthday. And, as a mom and hearing that, it was the worst news I'd ever received in my life. But it also makes you realize like a lot of people don't have a choice on what they're dealt with. Our son didn't get to choose, that disease state, and he never had the opportunity to take care of himself. And so my message of self-care and taking care of yourself and healthy living truly comes from the message of of my dad and Stephen, very different stories, but they really gave me purpose in promoting overall wellness and health, not just physical health, but mental, emotional, spiritual as well.
I'm sorry to hear that. That breaks my mama heart. I'm gonna be honest. I just a little cry. So I'm gonna try to hold that back because that really sucks. I understand. I have a son with a disability who didn't get to choose that, and it's the life in which he is dealt. And while he is an adult and he is okay right now and he's on his own, you just never know if something is gonna take that from him and how he can handle it. So
Yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah, and we all have a cross to bear. Not no one goes through life unscathed, right? We all have something that we deal with. And to me, I live my life, I want to help carry other people's crosses with them, help them get through the tough storms in their life. And I've been fortunate to have a great community around me who's helped me through those times. And so it's important to acknowledge and understand that, we all go through struggles and we're there to support one another.
I love that message. That's great because yes, I think we need more love and understanding in this world. And I feel like, and this is just me, the older I get, the more I understand versus just jumping to an emotional response. And I'm like, oh, well, everybody has stuff and these are the things I carry. And more grace, I guess is the word I'm looking for.
Yes.
So I
Yeah, I
love to
call it
see that.
practice the pause is what I call it. Like that's my words for this year. I always choose words and it's pause, patience, and being present because I think so often too we're just trying to get on to the next thing or what we're looking forward to in the future and we're missing out on the opportunities that are, right in the present moment. And I have three other children and I think back to the time of raising them and much of that time was spent just getting by because I was in such a state of grief and loss. I went through more trauma besides my dad and son. I lost two babies in utero. I just a lot of trauma in my early life. And so I wish I could go back and just be more present in those times versus rushing through or feeling like I had to do so much stuff, right? So that's important too, is just to stop and be present.
I understand that. I feel like as a child and a, teenager, early 20s, I had a child by the time I was 18. So I was in survival mode and I didn't have time for compassion. I didn't have time to be present either. So I love that you're realizing that and understanding it because some people never get there and it sucks for them, but I'm glad that you got there.
Yeah, and I can understand that survival mode. It is legit, right? It's like getting through the day. And when you asked about my coaching and speaking, probably in my early 40s, I realized I was in survival mode for so long. My cortisol was elevated. I didn't feel well, and I was teaching multiple classes in the community. I was a personal trainer and fitness instructor and doing all the stuff, but I realized I wasn't pouring into myself. And so I went to a John Maxwell training, then I went to a Ziegler legacy certification. I opened a gym. I became certified in grief movement. So I really started to pour into myself to help others. And so that's really when the tide shifted for me when I noticed that I was in a better mental space and physical, even though I was, I looked healthy. Inside I didn't feel healthy. And so it's like stopping and realizing what do we need to do to put on our armor first, right? Well, how do we take care of ourselves so then we're able to pour to everyone else?
I agree, which leads me to my next question. Like, what are your own personal values and how do they influence your coaching style?
Well, number one is being authentic and showing up the best you can in life. And some days it's not great. This moving has been a really big transition. I turned 50 this year. My youngest started college, so I have an empty nest. I sold my gym of a community of women that I loved and adored, moved. And so all these transitions have really taught me just, there's days where it's tough, and letting people help you, letting people in, showing up authentically to the best that you can. And that's the whole premise of, I just released a book and it's called R.E.A.L. So how do you show up real? And also how do you keep it realistic in life? Because oftentimes we try to do things that aren't sustainable. So I think the biggest thing for me is authenticity, being vulnerable, being human, and not putting on that fake, like it's great, everything's great, because it's not. For no one has it perfect. They're probably my biggest values, and also I love connecting people, Dusta. So I very much relate to you. I just love people, and I just want to help. And so my values, I think, stem too from my childhood. Like my parents were amazing, and I watched my dad care for everyone, and my mom took care of five of us kids. And so I'm pretty much a product of the way I grew up, and brought some of those values with me along the way. So I try to teach that to my kids.
Oh, and to piggyback off of that, I met with a therapist, not for personal reasons, for the podcast. And she had mentioned how everything stems back to our childhood. And she said that a lot of things that she deals with are people who are going, why did this thing affect me at 10 years old, is still carrying it today. And I was like, man, that's something to really think about, especially when you're raising children. And that's something I needed to hear too, because I didn't think about how everything I'm doing currently, and when I was in survival mode, I didn't know what I was doing. I'm just surviving every day. And that does affect them later. So sorry, my little rant is over.
No, no. I mean, I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, we carry trauma. You think of PTSD and anything that's happened in life. And sometimes people aren't able to move through that. And it can kill you, honestly. It can just weigh you down so much that it creates so much inflammation and disease in your body. And I've seen that happen with clients. And so it's learning to understand that, yes, we are going to go through those times. And more often than not, it's not our fault. But even if it is, it's grace, like you mentioned. And how do we move forward?
Absolutely. I think that's a very big part of life in general for, I want to say women, but people in general. Because I think we carry it a little bit more heavy sometimes than other people.
Yes.
So what is your own biggest life lesson learned, and how has it shaped your coaching approach?
Oh, that's a loaded question. My biggest life lesson. Well, I will tell you, out of college, I was a pharmaceutical rep, which was a great job to have.
Mm-hmm.
But I found very quickly that life doesn't go the way we planned.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I got married to my husband. We're still together 27 years later through all the stuff. He was in school. I got pregnant with my first Isabel and was extremely sick. I was bedridden. I had an IV, like all the stuff that could happen, like with hyperemesis, was this girl here. I went into labor 2 months early with her, and she was a preemie. And so I was right then at 24 years old, I realized, well, life is not going to go the way we planned, right? It's not going to be pretty or perfect, and it's going to be messy. And so that was my first experience of that. And then, of course, when our son was diagnosed, again, I had met people before him, like in my pharmaceutical job, and that's why I bring it up. I remember meeting another rep from a company, and he was sharing with me how he just lost his 2-year-old to leukemia. And I'll never forget like the feeling I had when he told me, and how devastated I was for him, and thinking I just could never imagine like that, and you think things aren't going to happen to you until it does. And of course, you never wish that on anyone. But I'll never forget that. And I wrote a book about my experience with loss and grief. But that was part of my book is, you think it's not going to happen to you, but then when you're faced with it, how are you going to deal with it? And we all deal with things very differently, especially from a male and female perspective, or husband and wife, or whatever it is, or whoever it is. And so I realized very quickly that life was just not going to roll out the way I imagined in my head, like this fairy tale. And so, how was I going to be resilient and push forward? And for me, it was like when our son was diagnosed, we automatically got involved with a nonprofit through SMA, or spinal muscular atrophy. And so we started a nonprofit in his memory. We started doing things to maybe not find a cure for the disease, although we're getting closer, but how can I support others that are going to unfortunately go through this? Or how can I find, support funding to find a cure? And so finding, there's a message out of your mess, right? You've probably heard that before. And so how can my my story, or the chapter that's not so good, turn into a better page, and how can that help someone else in return? Because really that's what life is about, is we go through experiences, and those experiences shape us, but then how can we help others when they go through those really tough times?
I understand that. That's a lot of the reason I share my story. I don't know how much you know, but went through a domestic violence relationship, and I come out on top because I wasn't going to let that define who I am and what was going to happen to me. And I didn't think about it at the time when I started sharing my story. I just was like trying to get it out because it was all in here. No one really knew. And I was like, it needs to come out, come out. But through doing that, I have inspired people, and I wasn't trying to, but I'm realizing now, like, if I could help just one person leave a bad relationship, know that they can come out on the other side and everything's going to be okay, that's like absolute gold to me. So keep
Yeah.
sharing those stories, guys. Like, it's very important because somebody could be silently going through it.
Yeah, you can either choose to be a victim or a hero. And I think, and I think people that are, they take their mess, right, and they turn it into something else, or are drawn to each other as well. And there's another point. Oh, working as a coach and owning a gym for many years, I found that so many women did live in silence. But once you do open up, like you did with your story, Dusta, it gives people the opportunity to share in a safe space and not feel so isolated or alone. And I wish more women would do that, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's an eating disorder, whether it's sexual abuse, whatever it is. And I don't mean like go, put it on a platform, but to talk about it in a safe place can really change your life, right, for the better. And I was very fortunate to be part of that for so many women, where I created a space where they felt heard and seen and understood, so that they could then move forward.
And I love that. I love connecting with other people who tell their stories and that they're just out there, because I know that it's really uncomfortable for a lot of people to deal with. And that's probably why they stay silent. But maybe somewhere down the road, they'll hear either one of our stories and be like, you know what? Maybe it's time to say something. So keep on
Absolutely.
doing it. I love it. Thank you so much
Yes.
for sharing.
Oh, you're welcome.
So let's talk about what specific areas of coaching that you specialize in. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I'm really excited. I just took a new job here. It took me a few months to kind of find my way and find the right fit for me. And being in the health and wellness industry, I just became the director of a new gym opening up in Cary called Alloy Personal Training. And what really brought me to this place, or attracted me, is that it's small group personal training, very individualized. And that's important because we are all different, right? We have, we're all different levels, and we deal with different injuries or issues. And so what I love about this community is that we can work with 4 to 6 people, um, in a capacity where we can still individualize the programs. And that is, to me, is very important, because being in this industry, I've seen so many people get injured because they're not doing the right things. And so I get to be part of an experience where I'm coaching them to reach their goals, whether it's to be able to play with their grandkids down, in the future, or they want to train for a race, whatever their goals are, that I get to be part of that journey with them. And it's, again, not just the physical aspect, it's the mental piece. Because if we don't get the mental piece right, if we can't work through all the things, then it's hard for everything else to fall into place. So I get to be part of that platform. That's important to me, is that whole being.
I have to cough.
It's okay.
I will edit that out. Sorry. I was like, hold it back. And I'm like,
It's
can you
okay.
see?
No, that's a horrible feeling.
Let me take one sip. Like, I'm going to edit this whole thing out. So,
You're good. Good thing for editing, right? And
oh,
I have my
when I
dog licking and scratching over here.
when I first started, I didn't have an editing software, so I was like, "F it, it just whatever it is." But
Well, and, honestly, Dust, I appreciate that, because it's like, it's the real deal, right? This is how we're showing up today.
yes, that's great. Thank you for understanding. I appreciate that.
Oh, of course.
So, moving forward, let's talk about what are some of the most common challenges that you see your clients facing, and how can you help them?
Absolutely. Well, again, my whole realistic framework, I have my little book here, is on real health. And so I created this a few years ago. Real stands for realistic and resilient energy. Like, what are we using for sources of energy in our life, whether it's nutrition, movement, sleep, our environment, people around us. Taking action, that's the A, because nothing changes if we don't move, right?
Hmm.
And then it's all based on the premise of loving ourselves. And I think for many people, they don't have respect for themselves. They don't love themselves. And it's really finding what that is that's going to help them through that process. I'm working with a few clients right now I can think of, that we're working through those. Like, how do we find that love for ourselves, and set boundaries and show our bodies respect? Um, so I think many people get overwhelmed by all the messages out there. the quick fixes, as I call them. And I'm not saying quick fixes aren't. There's some things that are good for some people, but not others. But really, how do you make changes in a realistic way that you're not don't feel like you have to change your whole life all at once? Like I'm not a New Year's resolution girl because to me it's like I'm turning the page to a new year, but it's still me and it's like I still have the same goals. And so it's creating change in your life through micro habits. And I think people get overwhelmed by all that. They don't know where to start. They don't have a coach to guide them. They don't have the right goals. And they also, some people like, have you ever heard if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time?
No, but I love
Yeah.
that.
So you got to have like, where are we going? And here's the roadmap. And that's what I do with life coaching is we create a map to get you to the future you want. Because if you don't have someone to sit and hold your hand through that sometimes, we don't know where to start. And I mean, that's me personally too. I have some coaches. And so coaching is really important in whatever realm of your area of life that you're trying to improve upon.
I agree. I had a guest on here, Kareem. He told me about how even Michael Jordan had a coach. So having a coach is very important when you're a business coach for business, a life for life, and a personal for personal fitness. Like that's, and I was like, wow, that actually, okay, explains why he was so successful.
Yep.
So tell us, where can we find your book? Is it on
Yeah.
your website?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. You can also
Oh,
find it. I think it's going to be on my website soon. I just asked my social media girl to post it. My website is jessicamoyercoach.com. Um, yeah, that's where you can find all my information and connect with me. And it is on Amazon. Again, it's Real Health, Your Path to Optimal Living. I also wrote a book, Trying Through the Tears, Finding Hope and Purpose Through Loss. Um, I wrote that over COVID to really help people through their grief journeys. Not that you ever get through, you don't get over it, but you learn how to move through it and really learn how to heal your wounds.
and we'll link all of those in the episode so people can go and find your book. But I agree with you on that. I feel like the best way that somebody had explained grief to me was it's a suitcase and you got a ping pong ball in there and all the grief. And it's going to keep going around in the suitcase, right? And it's going to hit it. But over time, it's going to feel less painful. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense because things that are not as painful today were very painful back when I was dealing with it. So they just kind
Yeah.
of teach you how to deal with all that. It's
Yeah,
a
and grief
lot.
isn't just the loss of someone, it's going through what you experienced, or it's a divorce, or it's losing a job. And I just said to my husband yesterday, I made the decision to sell my gym and move, but the grief is very much still there because I miss the people and I miss the community and I missed my purpose. And so recreating that is hard. So grief can really come out in a lot of different ways.
Yes, and I'm happy that you brought that up because it leads us into something we haven't talked about on the podcast yet, and that is the feelings and like what do you do after you've built this empire and you sell it? How do you feel? How do you deal with that? What are some ways that you would tell your clients to manage those feelings?
Yeah, isn't it interesting that as a coach we don't tell, we guide people and we ask questions, but then when it's ourself, we're like, "Ooh, we really need to step back and have someone else help us." Because it's not as easy when you're trying to coach yourself, or if I'm having a conversation with my daughter and I'm like, "You really should go talk to a therapist because I'm your mom and it's going to be way different." Um, but yeah, it's been interesting to navigate this, and it really is. I didn't realize it until the past few weeks actually that I'm experiencing grief, and I didn't anticipate it. And I think sometimes in life we think things are going to be easier than they really are when you're in it. Like we make decisions that we think are best for us, and ultimately they probably are down the road. But when you're in the thick of it and you're going through all these changes at once and really trying to find out who you are again, and for me, it's I live with purpose. I very much believe that God has a plan for me and a calling. And so when I don't feel like my life is aligning with that, I struggle. And finding this new job with a gym that I feel aligns with my mission is definitely going to help me through that process um, of that. But I would love to talk to some other entrepreneurs that have experienced these feelings and kind of the way they navigated through it.
I agree with you. I'm actually kind of going through a transition myself where I built my business. I've been in business for 5 years, but due to some health things, I can no longer continue my business. So it's something that kind of popped up out of, I don't want to say nowhere, because there were warning signs. My body was like, hey, if you don't take a break, I'm going to take one for you. And I
Hmm.
was like, we'll be all right. I'll deal with it later. And now I'm having to, I don't want to use the word scramble, but I'm having to kind of deal with it all of a sudden, and I'm no longer going to be able to do this, and I'm feeling a little grief, a little sadness. The other thing that I'm feeling is kind of like relief, because as much as I love my business and I love it all, no longer having to do the daily grind is making me feel like a set of relief. Just kind of
Yes.
ah. And I look at it like this. It's not necessarily like a rejection, it's a redirection, just like you're doing now. You're directing yourself into a similar field that makes you feel good and purposeful, but it may not be the last place you are. And I think that we need to take those detours. And I'm going to say detour because we don't know how long it'll last. It could be forever, it could not be, but they're
Yeah.
definitely great experiences in life, and I'm all about experiences.
Me too. Me too, girlfriend. But
I
you brought up a very good point that if you didn't take the break, you are going to be forced to. And that's something that I so preach because oftentimes, like my dad, you work and you work and you work and you're ignoring, when a car engine light comes on, we're like, oh my God, we got to get into the shop. But when our body's doing that, or even our mind, how often are people saying, oh, I need to step back and reconsider like what I'm doing? Or these moms that are running themselves, they're exhausted but they're not setting boundaries. I was there. I did it. And at what expense is it taking and how are we showing up for our children or our job if we are exhausted, miserable, all the things, depressed? And so it's really important to say, okay, and like you did, I need to take a break before it's too late. And I can't tell you how many people they don't do that and then they're not being proactive anymore. They are reactive. Like, oh shoot, like what do I do now?
That is one thing that I grew up watching. Obviously I have two parents, but I had two parents that had two different views on the world. And my dad was always trying to be very proactive, and my mother was always reactive. And I tend to notice which one's life was a little bit more easy to manage. It was never my mother's. So I tried to be proactive with things, but when it came down to this, I slipped into that bad habit of being reactive, and that's where I'm at right now. So I just want to encourage everyone out there to be proactive, especially when it comes to your livelihood and your health, because that's without health, you have no wealth.
Yeah, yeah, you are exactly. That's what I preach. And if you need any help, let me know. I'm more than happy to support you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So let's talk about what's some of the typical outcomes of your clients achieve through your coaching.
Yeah, I mean, I've been very fortunate to be part of so many clients' lives and improving their lives. And I think mostly it's better quality of life. They feel better, they look better, they're showing up better, they're able to do things. I have one lady that comes to mind. Her name's Cindy, and she was a member of my gym, and um, I remember the first time I met her, she could barely even walk. She was in her 70s, had major spinal surgery, like had been through so much, was told she might never walk again. And like the following year after coming day in and day out, she was doing burpees. Like she was getting down and off. Yes, and I'm not lying. I do women's retreats. She came last year. She did one of the cold plunges. She ran into the ocean. And I'm like, so when you see those wins in life, you're like, this is why I do what I do. Because for just as many wins, there's people that just can't make the changes, right? And that's hard as a coach to see that. Um, but as far as life coaching, I'm working with someone right now and he is just struggling mentally with his marriage and midlife crisis like we many people go through, and it is finding that self-worth again through little steps, and starting to see that transformation and those aha moments. So there's just so many. When I left my gym, I had all my members sign a book, and just to go through that book, I need to do it again because it reminds me, like, I mean, it's a good feeling, like how I was able to be part of so many people's lives to help them. And that's we're in the business to do, right? Transform lives. So yeah, it's been pretty cool and rewarding, and I'm excited to do that now in a little different capacity. So
I saw something interesting on TikTok last night, and it was talking about midlife crisis, and it was talking about how, like, it exists, right? And it never really existed before. But the guy was saying how basically you're in your 20s, so you look for, or like, school. We'll start with school. You look forward to graduating. Okay, so once you're done with middle school, then you go to high school, then you go to college, and like once you're done, so basically people have midlife crisis because they get to their last step essentially, and then they're in charge of the next step, and we just don't know what to do. And so that's where you would come in and kind of be like, okay, what do you want out of life? Let's align those goals with what you're doing. And I
Yeah,
think that's
for
really
sure.
important.
It is, and it's like, oh, like you feel like in this weird, like, what it is. It's like, what's next? And I work with so many women who, they raise their kids and their priority was their children, which is great. But if you're not fostering yourself or your marriage, when your kids are not there anymore, it is really hard to figure out what's next because we've neglected those areas for so long, and then we're trying to be reactive. And that's probably a big part of the women, the people I work with, is women who are midlife and have neglected their health, or they don't know what's next for them, but they want to find something that's next. It's getting excited. Like, to me, it's like, what can I learn and grow on? So it's also the way you look at things too.
So we're going to work on the mind first, and then we're also going to work on the body to get them aligned.
Yes,
This sounds
absolutely.
wonderful. This sounds
I
like
have
something
this
I need.
I have this little thing called the 5G mindset that I actually trademarked, and it's focusing on gratitude, which I'm sure you've heard, Dusta. Like, what am I thankful for each day? Then it's generosity. How can I pour into someone today? Whether it's a text message or holding the door or buying them coffee. And then it's growth. Like, even if you're doing Wordle or doing something that's going to just help your mind, help you learn. And then it's grit, like digging deep and persevering. Like, every day we're going to be faced with some sort of situation where we got to just pick ourselves up. And then lastly, which you've mentioned a few times, is grace. And that's forgiveness for ourselves and others. And so it's a talking point with my kids. I've written an ebook about it. It's like, how can we use these gifts, because they're intrinsic gifts that don't cost anything, to change our mindset every day.
That is something hard. It's something I personally struggle with. It's like I wake up and I'm like, oh, great, this again. And then I have to remember, what am I grateful for? So I started doing this thing where I have to name 5 things I'm grateful for before my feet touch the floor.
Yes,
And I think that's super
absolutely.
important because you're right. Like, as a woman myself, and I'm closing in on 40, I'm getting to the point where it's like, okay, so what's next? What do we do? I went through a marriage and a divorce, and now I feel like I'm in a weird spot. And the only reason I say that is because I have 2 adult children, and then I have one that's 9. So
Right.
it's like, and I've done like all the steps, right? And I'm like, I'm here, and I'm like, I did it. Now what?
Yeah.
What's the next thing? So making sure I get
But
my mind right with my body.
you have the best of both worlds, I feel like, though, because I mean, I really miss having my like kids at home. And so you get to have the best of both worlds and kind of learn from like your adult kids now what you can do with your 9-year old. And so really embrace that. I think is pretty cool. Um, yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, that's it's great. I'm gonna be honest with you, it's so funny to watch my older children be like, but that's not how I was raised. But you didn't, but she gets a different mom. And I'm like, well, yeah. And then I was like, tell them, I'm like, sorry, like I messed up with you, but it's thank you for teaching me how to be better. And they're just like, it's okay. It's like, as long as she gets the better version. And I'm like, I'm gonna cry because like that's the sweetest thing that you could say. They are
Yeah,
really
and
good kids.
you again, it's like you do the best with what you know at that point. And then and I always say, when you don't know something, you don't know, but once you know it, okay, well then, that's a game changer, right? You don't know what you don't know, but then once you know it, okay, here we go.
Right. That's when I started reflecting on my parenting skills, is once my other children turned adults, and I was just like, "Oh, this is where you give me feedback." Okay. And so really had to think about the things that I was doing and how it was affecting them, and try
Yeah.
not to do it to the other one. But I got a really good compliment from my son, and it made my heart just melt. He told me that I did the best that I could with what was going on. He also told me that I did it, and that I raised really good kids, because he has, in his experience, he lives on his own, seen some people who were not raised appropriately. And he was like, you did it. And I was like, well, thank you. Like, that's like the best compliment. I may not have been perfect. Well, may not. I wasn't perfect. And sorry, I just stroked my own ego. But no, I wasn't perfect.
Oh, none of us are. If you show me a perfect person, well, doesn't exist.
Exactly. And I feel like I failed so many times. But I honestly feel too that your adult children, they're going to be the reflection of like who you are, your parenting style, and if you have a good relationship with them as adults, like whether or not you did a good job.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's been really humbling, and not in a bad way, just like because you just never know. I was like, oh, it's terrible, they're never gonna talk to me. Oh, that's not true at all. My daughter said she ain't never moving out. She's like, I'll live with you till I'm 26. And I was like,
Aw,
that's a compliment. Like, thank you. I appreciate that because I
she'll
was
change it.
18 and
She
out.
might change her mind.
I keep trying to tell her that, and she's like, I just can't live with anyone else. And I was like, she has OCD. I should probably have said that.
Yeah,
So her living conditions have to be a certain way, which is
yeah,
great.
yeah. That's okay.
Like, I'm glad she knows about that. All right. So moving forward, how do you create a safe and supportive space for your clients?
I think number one is really listening. Like, and I'm always working on this. Like, I'm trying that even like with, having a conversation with my husband is like trying not to interrupt and truly listening to what they're saying and repeating it back. This is what I heard you say. Because oftentimes that dialogue gets a little messed up between his mouth and my ears or a client, and we assume things. How many times do we assume or take I am like I take things personally. Oh girl. Um, but as far as a safe space, and again, I was very blessed to create a community like that where I knew that if women were coming in and sharing things with me, I wasn't saying a word about their situation. Like it was in a vault. And I always said that when they came in, like when you're in these walls or when we're having a conversation like this, I'm not going and I'm blabbing it to anyone. This is personal. And I value that trust, um, and transparency so much. And I think we all know someone that likes to blab or gossip, and that's just not who I am. So I think creating that space where they know that like when I have my retreat this weekend, I have 14 women coming. I know they all feel safe. I know they're very excited, and they know that whatever's said in that group, it's not leaving the group. They're there to help and support one another and lift one another up. And so it's finding a like-minded tribe too. And I think we all meet people and we're like, they're not our people. Doesn't mean I'm going to be unkind, but it's just not someone that I really want to associate with. And we get to control our circle for the most part. And so again, listening and just being a good person. I mean, it's really not that hard.
I'm laughing only because to some people it is the hardest thing in the world to do. And I'm just like,
I
it's
guess I
not.
know. But again, I think that goes back to, to setting boundaries with people. And I think the older I've gotten, the more I realize that it's okay to do that. That doesn't mean you're mean. It just means you're protecting your peace and that we have to be okay with that.
I love that you said that because that is something that in my, 38 years of life, I just recently learned is to protect my own peace. And while I'm mourning for the person that I was who didn't know that, I'm very happy that I discovered it now because it's been such a game changer for me. And that's something else that I'm trying to work into my midlife crisis over here too, is making sure that I'm protecting my peace and I'm having boundaries because I do not want what I had the first half. I don't want to deal with
Hmm.
any of that.
Yeah. And you learn. I mean, you learn from past, I don't want to say even mistakes. I mean, you learn from things that didn't work. I mean, that's how we grow. If we didn't have those things happen, then we wouldn't know any differently.
That's true. It just brings me back to this thing my dad used to tell me all the time when I was a kid. He would say, some people get older and wiser, and some people just get older. And he'd ask me which one I wanted to be. And I was like, ooh, that
Yeah,
hurt.
that's a good point.
Yeah. My dad was full of good advice.
Love it.
He just didn't make good choices. And sometimes we got to love people through their bad choices. So
Yeah, and we can't change that for people, right? You're responsible for yourself.
that was a hard lesson to learn, just as a personal thing, letting people live their own lives and make their own mistakes and loving them through it. And sometimes you just want to shake them and be like, what are you doing? But
Yeah. Yep.
At the same time, you have to have patience and you have to have grace, and these are things that I'm almost 40 and just learning, but that's okay.
Yes. Yep.
So let's talk about accountability because I know that's like a huge thing when it comes to getting a coach. So, what role does accountability and goal setting play in your coaching process?
Yeah, I mean, accountability is a big part of it. When I have a coaching session, I try to set up at least three. And part of my coaching is a check-in. Like, let me know how you're doing with your act. Because when someone meets with me, we go through the goals, and then each week or 2 weeks, we create an action plan. So I ask questions. This is what you feel like you can do to move forward to reach your goals. And then my role is to check in with them to make sure that they're doing it. And if not, what is getting in the way? What are the obstacles? How do we remove them? Or maybe we reset and pick different ones. So accountability is a big part, and goal setting. I mean, we need goals, and not just like goals that like have an ending, but then what's after that goal? Like, we got to think growth minded versus just like a goal. You got to be more growth minded with it. Like, think further beyond that one, because we never get to a point where we're done, right? I mean, like, if I'm training for a marathon, yeah, the marathon is at the end of that. I've trained for a marathon, but okay, what do I want to do next? Like, it's just not one and done. Like, what's next? And so constantly resetting.
I like that. That's something I haven't thought about yet. I'm learning how to set goals, and instead of necessarily writing like a goal list and when I want to accomplish it, I created a bingo card and all of the things are on there. So I don't have a specific timeline in which they need to be done, but they do need to be done. So
Yeah,
I can kind of, I don't want to say pick and choose, but I can be like, okay, well, we're working on this. But I never thought about beyond that. So
yeah.
now I've got to get my mind right and get beyond that.
Well, no, and it's great to have goals, but it's thinking like the big picture, right? You want to think small picture and big picture all at once. And I think there's a saying like we think we can get done so much more in a shorter amount of time than a longer amount of time. I forget what the saying is, but oftentimes people just get so in their head that then they just don't do anything. Analysis paralysis.
Yes. I
Yeah,
have
which
that
is
bad.
very easy to do.
I have it really bad with the ADHD because it's like as soon as I start thinking, I start spiraling, and then I'm like, it's too overwhelming. I'm not doing it. And that's why I was like, if I create a bingo card, I'm
I
not
love that.
writing everything out. I'm just going, that looks accomplishable. Let's do it.
Yeah. And again, it goes back to like, how do you set yourself up for success versus failure? And it is truly picking goals that you can absolutely achieve. So like, if you want to run a 5K in 4 months, okay, well, let's back it up. You're not just going to go run 3 miles today if you haven't been running. It's okay, you're going to go walk for 10 minutes. You're going to put your running shoes out. You're going to put your outfit on. And you're just going to go walk 10 minutes. That's it. Like, people overcomplicate it. And like, as a health coach too, I'm like, people don't succeed because they start with this like huge goal in mind, and then they think like they're going to just get it done that quickly, and it's a process. So
It is. And reminding ourselves that it's a process is something that I think is a big thing too. Because I have a pretty big goal list going on for 2025 and I know that I can achieve it, but sometimes I'm like, hey, listen, it's not going to happen in 6 months. It's going to happen if you work on it consistently every single day.
yeah, you got to chip away at it.
Yeah, so consistency is key, and I'm learning that. As a person with ADHD, it's very hard to have consistency. I'm consistently inconsistent, which is something I am working on. So anybody else out there, work on it too, because it is, it's a bear. It's literally a bear.
Hmm. I get it.
So let's talk about success with your coaching. So how do you measure success of your coaching engagements?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be different for every client because it depends on what their goals are. Again, so very personalized, and again, not all clients are going to be successful. I have to be okay with that, as hard as that is for me, because I do take things personally. That's a great book, The Four Agreements, if anyone hasn't read that. But that's one of the rules, is don't take things personally. So I tend to, if people don't succeed, and that's really hard as a coach. So you have to learn how to separate that it's not your failure. It's just that people didn't want to put the work in to reach their goals. Um, so success is different for everyone. You can't really measure. It's hard to measure that. It's, are they living the life that they desire through the steps that they created to take to get to that point, really, and constantly refocusing and re-engaging and recreating if it's not working. It's okay to change it.
I like that you mentioned that because that's one of the things that I attribute all of my success to is I look at something and I'm like, well, my therapist said, how bad does this have to get before you make a change? And so that's kind of how I do it. And I'm like, well, this is as bad as I want it to get. It's time to pivot. And a lot of people think about that as like, oh, you failure, this, that, and the other. I never look at it that way because I think that failure is the door to success. Like there's no better way to success than to be like, I've tried these things, they don't work. Now I know what's gonna work.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are just like afraid to fail, and that's understandable. It is. Because I've been afraid to fail my whole life about things, but I also go, if is it really a fail though? Because while on a resume, I look like a hot mess. Talking to me, I have a lot of experience in a lot of different things,
Yeah.
So I just kind of I go with that. It's experience, and I moved on.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people it's like failure to implement because they are so worried about not succeeding that they never even start. And I'm going to be honest, I struggle with that with like social media. Like I don't like doing live videos. I don't like doing videos like putting myself out there and doing like a reel. I'm not comfortable with that. And I've been told like you need to get comfortable with it. I'm like, nah, just really not there yet. I mean, so it's going to be different for everyone and what barriers or obstacles or the things we put in place that we don't think we can succeed. We tell ourselves stories, but you can change the story you tell yourself, right? It's just a
Absolutely.
story. So yeah, it really just depends on perspective too.
I agree on that. You got to make sure you have a good perspective on it. My dad used to
Yes.
tell me that too all the time. I'd ask him a question, and he'd be like, "Well, it's all about perspective," and I'm like, "That's not really answering my question, sir."
My dad had a good one. As a doctor, I would, I think I was always worried something was wrong with me because all I heard was all these like medical ailments. And he would be like, you could walk out and get hit by a bus tomorrow. You're going to worry about it every day. And I'm like, okay. Like he would say that to me to remind me, like, your life can change in an instant by something that you didn't even create. And I'm like, I got to remember that.
That's true. I never think about that. So I try to have less anxiety and less worry about things I can't control, and I'm just going to control me and my consistency because that's getting
Yeah.
bad.
Yep. You draw a circle around yourself and you are the person in the middle of that.
Absolutely. Was there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners about you and your business and your future?
No, I mean, it's kind of we're gonna see where it goes. Where is this a rest stop for us? Are we moving forward? We don't know. It's like, the older you get, you're not quite sure what's next. I do have some big plans to speak on some stages of some people that I really respect in the industry. So building that out. I would love to, continue my journey with Alloy and see where that takes me. I think it's going to be a great addition to the amazing gyms that are already in our community. They all have their place, and people need to find what works for them. I learned that as a gym owner when I first opened, I was always like worried about the competition, but I realized very quickly that my gym wasn't for everyone. The next gym wasn't for like you have to find where you fit, and we're not going to fit everywhere. And so I'm excited to see how Alloy, brings wellness to the community in a very different way than a lot of gyms. It stands out differently with expert trainers and just a whole different mindset about personal training. Um, and personally, it's just I am continuing to learn and grow, and hopefully continuing to book some talks on overall health and wellness through my R.E.A.L framework.
I'm excited for you. I cannot wait to see how this goes in the future. And in 1 year, I'm going to have you come back so you can update everybody on how your adventure has been and whether or not it was
Awesome.
just a rest stop or a detour or
We'll
something more.
see.
Oh, I'm gonna trademark that. Okay, rest stop, detour, or something more.
Right? Oh, I love it. Do it, Dust. I'm telling you. Yeah, this was great to connect with you. And I've already been listening to some of your podcasts, and I love what you do for the community. I think it's important
Thank
to have
you.
a realistic and authentic voice. That's very important.
That's a lot of the reason I started the podcast. Two reasons. One, I felt very like alone in my journey. I wanted to connect with others. And then I was having these conversations, over coffee. And I was like, this is really good information. Maybe somebody out there needs this and wants to hear it too. And then it kind of just snowballed into this effect where now we're sharing resources. We're going to help you get started. We're going to grow your business. We're going to connect you to the people that are going to do that for you. So I just, again, I just wanted to share my story, and it's gone to something a lot bigger, which I appreciate. So thank you very much.
I love that.
Well, super exciting. Well, tell everybody where they can find you. What's your website?
Yeah, it's jessicamoyercoach.com. I'm on Facebook, Jessica Smith Moyer. Instagram is, I think, more. I don't spend a lot of time on other platforms. I'm not on TikTok. You can find Alloy Personal Training Cary on Instagram and Facebook. Yeah, I'm very easy to connect with. So look forward to helping someone that is ready to take their journey to the next level.
Oh, I'm so excited. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and join us again next week for another amazing episode of Down Home Dirt. Bye, guys.